Hey guys, tonight we begin not with fairy kings or enchanted forests, but with something far more chaotic and intoxicating. Falling in Love in Manhattan, 1995. Because believe it or not, navigating romance in an era of velvet ropes, basement clubs, and chemical adventures was somehow even messier than accidentally liking your crush's Instagram post from 3 years ago. From downtown nightlife to Central Park at midnight, this tale of misguided love was less about magic potions and more about bad decisions. Though honestly, the effect was pretty much the same. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's drift into the wildest night Manhattan has ever seen. Manhattan, 1995. The city that never sleeps pulses with a rhythm all its own, a heartbeat measured in bass lines and taxi horns, in the click of platform heels on concrete, and the hiss of steam rising from subway grates. This is the era of heroin chic and Calvin Klein ads, of velvet ropes and guest lists, where the night holds more promise than the day ever could. In a towering glass and steel building on the Upper East Side, Theodore Egius sat behind his mahogany desk, surveying his empire. Fashion executive, industry titan, a man whose approval could launch 1,000 careers or end them with a single phone call. His corner office overlooked Central Park, but his eyes were fixed on something far less pleasing than the autumn trees below. His daughter Hermia stood before him in torn fishnets and a vintage slip dress from a Ludlow Street thrift store. Her dark hair chopped short and deliberately messy, coal-black eyeliner smudged around defiant eyes. "You will marry Demetrius," Theodore said, his voice carrying the weight of old money and older expectations. "His father and I have already made the arrangements. He's a vice president at Calvin Klein. He has a future, stability." Hermia's jaw tightened. At 22, she was small but fierce, a spark of rebellion in her father's carefully controlled world. "I don't love Demetrius," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I love Lysander." Theodore's face hardened like concrete setting. Lysander. He spat the name like bitter wine. That club promoter? That nobody who spends his nights in basements in the Meatpacking District. "I'd rather see you in a convent than with him." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and final. In this city of infinite possibility, Theodore had somehow found the one place that promised nothing, a religious retreat upstate, a life of silence and obligation. The choice was medieval, absurd, yet his eyes held no humor. Marry Demetrius, or disappear from the only world she'd ever known. Demetrius himself waited in the outer office, tall and handsome in his Helmut Lang suit, his hair perfectly styled with too much product. He was everything a father could want, successful, connected, appropriate. He was also boring as hell, Hermia thought, a man who talked about market shares and full collections with the same bland enthusiasm. But there was someone else in that outer office too. Helena, Hermia's best friend since their days at Spence, stood near the window, her willowy frame draped in a slip dress that hung on her like she'd forgotten to eat again. She was model tall and model thin, with the kind of ethereal beauty that photographers loved but couldn't quite capture. Her pale blonde hair fell straight down her back, and her eyes, huge and sad, never left Demetrius's face. Helena had been in love with Demetrius since sophomore year. They dated once, briefly, intensely. He'd written her poetry, terrible, angsty poetry in a black moleskin notebook. He'd taken her to indie films at the Angelica, and then he'd met Hermia at a gallery opening in Chelsea, and Helena had ceased to exist for him entirely. Now she followed him like a shadow, desperate and transparent in her longing, unable to let go of something that had barely been real to begin with. Later that evening, as the sun set over the Hudson and the city began its transformation from day to night, Hermia met Lysander in Tompkins Square Park. He sat on a bench near the dog run, smoking a cigarette, his leather jacket worn soft with age. Lysander had the look of someone who'd never quite fit into the Upper East Side world where he'd been raised. Prep school dropout, trust fund reject, a boy who'd chosen downtown grit over uptown polish. "He's serious," Hermia said, collapsing beside him. "My father. He's actually serious about the marriage thing." Lysander flicked ash onto the cracked pavement. Around them, the park bustled with his usual cast of characters. Crusty punks with dogs on rope leashes, chess players arguing in Russian, NYU students pretending to read Bukowski. "So we leave," he said simply. "Leave?" "The city. We go to my aunt's place in Providence. She's cool, old hippie type. We can crash there, figure things out. Your dad can't force you to marry anyone if you're not here." Hermia looked at him, this beautiful disaster of a boy who stayed out until dawn every night, who knew every doorman and bouncer from Tribeca to the Lower East Side, who lived for the moment when the DJ dropped the perfect track, and the whole room became one breathing organism. He was irresponsible and impractical, and she loved him with a fierceness that scared her. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. There's a full moon. We'll leave from the park, cut through Central Park to the west side, catch a late bus from Port Authority. By the time your father realizes you're gone, we'll be in Rhode Island eating clam cakes." She kissed him then, tasting cigarettes and possibility. Behind them the streetlights flickered on one by one, and the city began to hum with its nighttime frequency. What they didn't see was Helena, standing near the park entrance, watching them with hungry, heartbroken eyes. She'd followed Hermia from the office, unable to help herself, caught in the gravitational pull of her own misery. And now she knew their secret, their escape plan, and her mind was already working, calculating, desperate. If she told Demetrius about Hermia's plan to run away, he would be grateful. He would have to chase after her, and Helena could come too. She could help him, comfort him, and maybe, just maybe, he would remember what they'd had. He would see her again, really see her, not as Hermia's pathetic friend, but as Helena, the girl who'd loved him first and best. Across town, in a cramped studio apartment above a bodega on Avenue C, 6 artists gathered around a cluttered coffee table covered in sketches, empty beer bottles, and overflowing ashtrays. This was the East Village, the last affordable corner of Manhattan where artists still believed they could make it without selling out, where rent was $800 a month if you didn't mind the bathtub in the kitchen and the radiator that clanged all night like a ghost playing percussion. Nick Bottom sprawled across a thrift store couch, holding court as usual. He was a performance artist from Long Island, Queens technically, but he told people the city and hoped they wouldn't ask follow-up questions. At 28, he still believed his big break was coming, still thought the right curator would see his work and recognize his genius. He wore vintage bowling shirts and chunky black glasses, his hair gelled into deliberately messy spikes. "Listen, listen," he said, gesturing with his beer bottle, sloshing foam onto his jeans. "The Whitney Biennial is coming up, right? They're looking for fresh voices, new perspectives. We create an installation piece that doubles as a performance. We call it The Dream. It's about love, identity, transformation. We perform it guerrilla style in Central Park at midnight." Peter Quince, the closest thing the group had to a leader, adjusted his own glasses and studied the rough sketches. Quince worked as a graphic designer at a small publishing house in the Flatiron District, actually made rent most months, which gave him a certain authority. He was careful, thoughtful, always worried about permits and logistics. "Central Park at midnight is illegal," Quince said. "Also dangerous." "That's what makes it art," Bottom countered. "We're making a statement about public space, about who owns the night. It's guerrilla theater meets installation, art meets happening. Capra would approve." Francis Flute, a slight young man with bleached hair and a silver nose ring, looked uncomfortable. He worked at a coffee shop in Soho, made espresso for art dealers and celebrities, and harbored quiet dreams of being a painter. "What exactly would we be performing?" he asked nervously. Bottom leaned forward, his eyes shining with the fervor of someone who'd had too much coffee and too many big ideas. "A love story, ancient yet modern. Pyramids and Thisbe." "Pyramus and Thisbe," Quince corrected gently. "Right, exactly. Star-crossed lovers separated by a wall. It's Romeo and Juliet before Romeo and Juliet. It's West Side Story before West Side Story. We use found objects, urban materials. Flute, you'd play Thisbe. Flute's face went pale. The girl. I have to play the girl? It's drag. It's transgressive. It's Warhol. It's Lee Bowery. It's art. Tom Snout. A tinsmith. An actual tinsmith, the last one in Manhattan probably, rubbed his weathered hands together. He made decorative metalwork for restaurants and boutiques, practical stuff that paid. I could build the wall, he said. Corrugated metal, maybe some chain-link fence. Very urban, very now. Robin Starveling, a tailor who worked in the garment district, nodded his thin frame enthusiastically. I can do costumes. I'm thinking deconstructed, safety pins, torn fabrics. Very Vivian Westwood meets homeless chic. Snug. A carpenter who actually built sets for off Broadway shows in warehouses in Long Island City was the only one with real theater experience. He sat quietly listening, his calloused hands wrapped around his beer. When would we do this? He finally asked. Tomorrow night, Bottom announced. Full moon, maximum drama. We rehearse tomorrow afternoon in the park, then perform at midnight. We invite some critics, some curators, someone from The Voice, someone from Paper Magazine. We document it. We make it an event. The group exchanged glances, excitement mixed with terror, the familiar cocktail of artistic ambition and practical doubt. They were all pushing 30, all still waiting tables or doing day jobs, all still believing that this time, this project, this piece would be the one that changed everything. We'll need to scout the location, Quint said, his organizational mind already working. Find a spot that's secluded enough that we don't get shut down immediately, but accessible enough for an audience. The Ramble, Bottom said immediately. The wooded section on the west side. It's like a forest right in the middle of the city. It's perfect, it's magical. What none of them knew was that the Ramble had its own reputation, its own nighttime life. After dark, the winding paths and dense foliage became something else entirely. A place where the rules of daylight Manhattan didn't apply, where the city's secret self emerged like a creature from underground. Meanwhile, in a minimalist loft in Tribeca, Helena stood before Demetrius, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He'd been getting ready to go out. Black turtleneck, dark jeans, his usual uniform for making the rounds of gallery openings and club premieres. She'd shown up unannounced, breathless from climbing his stairs, and now she stood in his pristine white living space, so out of place with her emotional chaos. They're running away, she said. Hermia and Lysander. Tomorrow night. They're going through Central Park to get to Port Authority. Demetrius froze, his hand on a bottle of Drakkar Noir. What? Her father's making her marry you, so they're leaving the city. But if you go to the park tomorrow night, you can stop them. You can talk to her. Make her understand. His face hardened with determination, that corporate focus that made him successful. Which part of the park? I don't know exactly, but they're leaving around midnight. If you go, if you search, you'll come with me, he said, not a question, but a statement. You know Hermia better than anyone. You can help me find her. Helena's heart leaped even as her mind registered the casual cruelty of it. He wanted her help to win another woman, but she nodded anyway, unable to stop herself, caught in the current of her own desperate love. Outside, the city roared on, indifferent to human drama. Taxis streamed down Broadway like corpuscles through arteries. The N train rattled beneath the streets. In kitchens across 5 boroughs, restaurant workers prepped for dinner service. On trading floors gone quiet, cleaning crews emptied trash and vacuumed. And as the sun disappeared behind New Jersey, Manhattan began its nightly transformation. The change that happened every evening at that magic hour when day people went home, and night people emerged when the city belonged to those who lived for the darkness and everything it promised. But there was another Manhattan, one that most people never saw. It existed in the spaces between, in the hours after the bars closed and before the stockbrokers woke. It lived in basement clubs with no signs, in after-hours spots that operated on whispered invitations and secret knocks. This was the realm of Oberon. Oberon was a legend, though few could say they'd actually met him. Some claimed he'd been around since the 70s, unchanged, ageless, presiding over the birth of disco and its death, the rise of hip-hop, the explosion of house music. Others said he was just a trust fund kid with good connections and better drugs. But everyone agreed on one thing: if Oberon was involved, the night would be unforgettable. He held court in a place called Elysium, a club that didn't exist on any map, that had no liquor license, no fire inspection, no official anything. It occupied a former meatpacking warehouse on a cobblestone street where blood had once run in rivulets to the Hudson. The building looked abandoned from the outside, its windows painted black, its metal door covered in rust. But inside, after 3 a.m., when the legal club shut down and the bridge and tunnel crowd caught their last trains home, Elysium came alive. The space was vast and dark, lit only by candles in mason jars and strings of Christmas lights that had been up so long they'd become permanent. Vintage couches and armchairs clustered in corners, their upholstery torn and mysterious. A bar made from reclaimed wood served water and juice. Bring your own everything else. And in the back, on a platform built from milk crates and plywood, a DJ spun vinyl, the music reverberating through your chest like a second heartbeat. Tonight, Oberon sat on a velvet throne, literally an actual throne someone had stolen from a theater production, watching his kingdom with hooded eyes. He was beautiful in an unsettling way, androgynous and ageless, his long dark hair falling past his shoulders, his clothes a mixture of vintage Vivienne Westwood and downtown thrift store finds, leather pants, a poet's shirt, rings on every finger. He could have been 25 or 45. Time seemed not to touch him. Beside him should have been Titania, his partner in all things, the yin to his yang, the queen to his king. But her throne sat empty, and the absence felt like a missing tooth, something everyone noticed but no one mentioned. Titania was holding her own court across town in the East Village, in a smaller, more intimate space called The Bower. It was above a Polish restaurant on First Avenue, accessed through a back stairway that smelled of pierogies and cigarettes. Where Elysium was dark and industrial, the Bower was draped in fabrics, silk scarves and tapestries hanging from the ceiling, creating little rooms within the room. Moroccan lanterns cast amber light. The music was different too, trip-hop and down-tempo, Portishead and tricky, music for intimacy rather than ecstasy. Titania herself reclined on a daybed piled with velvet pillows, surrounded by her crew, the most beautiful boys and girls in Manhattan, models and artists and club kids who treated her like royalty. She was stunning, statuesque, with dark skin that glowed in the candlelight and hair wrapped in colorful cloth. She wore vintage Thierry Mugler, architectural and dramatic, and commanded attention without effort. The split between Oberon and Titania had happened 3 weeks ago, and the whole downtown scene was still reeling. They'd been together for years, inseparable, the king and queen of Manhattan nightlife. Their parties were legendary. Their taste was impeccable. Together they discovered DJs who now played the Tunnel and Sound Factory. They'd thrown warehouse parties that people still talked about years later. But then Titania had taken in a new protege, a young club kid from the Midwest, Indiana or Iowa, somewhere that started with an I. His name was something forgettable, but everyone called him Mercury. He was beautiful, innocent, untouched by the city's cynicism. She'd found him at Port Authority fresh off the bus with $50 and a dream, and she'd adopted him, dressed him, educated him in the ways of the night. Oberon had demanded she send Mercury away. He doesn't belong to this world, he'd said. He's too young, too vulnerable. You're playing with someone's life. Since when do you care about vulnerability? Titania had shot back. You who gives out those little pills like candy? Who creates experiences that people can never quite remember but never forget? The argument had escalated, become about more than just Mercury. Years of resentment had surfaced. His controlling nature, her independence, his jealousy, her secrets. They'd split their empire like divorcing monarchs, each taking their followers, their venues, their territories. And the city itself seemed to feel the rift. The weather had been strange, unseasonably warm for October. Thunderstorms rolled through without warning. Fog crept up from the rivers at odd hours. Some of the old-timers, the ones who remembered New York in the 70s when it was dangerous and bankrupt and truly alive, said the city was out of balance. When the king and queen of the night weren't speaking, nothing flowed right. Into this tense situation came Robin Goodfellow, known to everyone simply as Puck. He was Oberon's right hand, his fixer, his finder, the person who made things happen. Puck had the energy of someone who'd done too much cocaine, though whether he actually had was anyone's guess. He moved through the city on a battered mountain bike, appearing and disappearing like a ghost, always grinning, always scheming. Puck was short and wiry, with bleached hair spiked in every direction and a face full of piercings. He wore baggy jeans held up with suspenders, a tight white tank top, and chunky sneakers. He looked like a raver, a skater, a punk, whatever he needed to be to get where he was going. His greatest talent was chaos. He lived for the moment when plans went sideways, when the unexpected happened, when the night spiraled into beautiful disaster. "Boss," Puck said, appearing at Oberon's side like he'd materialized from smoke. "The natives are restless. People are asking about Titania, wondering if there's going to be a reunion." Oberon's jaw tightened. "There won't be. Not while she's got that boy with her. Mercury? He's harmless. Sweet kid, actually. He reminds her of something she can never have again," Oberon said quietly. "Innocence. That moment before the city takes its pound of flesh. She's trying to preserve it, but you can't preserve innocence. You can only destroy it slowly or quickly." Puck shrugged. "Want me to do something about it?" "Like what?" "I don't know. I'm good at chaos. I could create a distraction, get the kid out of the picture." Oberon considered this, his rings catching the candlelight as he drummed his fingers on the throne's armrest. Outside, the city roared on, and tomorrow night would bring a full moon, always a powerful time in Manhattan, when the lunatics came out to play and anything could happen. "Tomorrow night," Oberon finally said, "Central Park. I heard Titania's planning to take her whole crew there. Some kind of full moon gathering. We'll go too. See if we can't settle this once and for all." Puck's grin widened, feral and delighted. "Tomorrow night," he repeated. "Full moon, Central Park. This is going to be amazing." And somewhere in the city, in 4 different neighborhoods, 4 young people prepared for this same night in the same park, none of them knowing that their paths would cross, that the night people and the day people would collide, that nothing would be the same by sunrise. The next day arrived heavy and humid, the sky a strange shade of yellow that made the city look like an old photograph. By late afternoon, storm clouds gathered over the Hudson, dark and pregnant with rain that wouldn't fall. The air felt electric, charged with something more than weather. Old women in Brighton Beach muttered about bad omens. Psychics in the West Village reported their phones ringing off the hook. Even the pigeons seemed agitated, swirling in chaotic patterns above Washington Square Park. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of apocalyptic orange, Central Park prepared to receive its various visitors. The park was an anomaly, 800 acres of manufactured nature in the heart of the concrete jungle. Frederick Law Olmsted had designed it in the 1850s to be a democratic space, a place where rich and poor could walk the same paths. But by 1995, the park had become something else, a patchwork of territories and times, a place where different New Yorks overlapped like double-exposed film. By day it belonged to joggers and tourists, hot dog vendors and street performers. Rollerbladers circled the loop. Families fed ducks at the pond. Old men played chess at the tables near the boathouse. But at night, especially in the Ramble, that 38-acre section of deliberately wild landscape on the west side, the park transformed. The paths became confusing, deliberately so. Trees planted too close together created a canopy that blocked out city light. You could be 20 feet from Central Park West and feel like you were in the Adirondacks. Nick Bottom and his crew arrived first, around 7 p.m., hauling their materials in stolen shopping carts and canvas bags. They looked ridiculous and determined. 6 artists on a mission, dressed in black like they were pulling a heist instead of staging guerrilla theater. "This is perfect," Bottom declared, standing in a small clearing surrounded by dense foliage. Through the trees, you could barely see the lights of the buildings on Central Park West. Traffic noise filtered through as a distant hum, like the ocean. "This is our stage. Snout, start building the wall right there. Starveling, get the costumes ready. Quince, you're directing. So direct." Peter Quince surveyed the space with the designer's eye, already imagining sightlines and audience placement. "We'll need lights," he said. "Flashlights, lanterns, something. It's going to be dark." "Dark is good," Bottom insisted. "Dark is atmospheric. We're creating an experience, not a Broadway show." Flute sat on a rock, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands, trying to memorize his lines from a photocopied script. "I still don't understand why Thisbe has to die," he muttered. "Can't we do a happy ending? It's almost Halloween. People want fun, not tragedy." "It's not Halloween, it's October," Bottom corrected. "And tragedy is timeless. Tragedy is art. Comedy is for commercials." They worked as the light faded, hammering and draping, arguing about blocking and motivation. Snout constructed his wall from a shopping cart, some chicken wire, and cardboard spray-painted silver. It looked absurd in the best way. Urban debris transformed into theater. Starveling pinned together costumes from thrift store finds and trash bags. The whole operation had the desperate energy of people who believed they were creating something important, even if no one else would ever agree. Meanwhile, as darkness settled over the city like a velvet curtain, Titania's crew made their way into the park from the east side. There were about 20 of them, beautiful and strange, dressed for a party that hadn't been invented yet. Club kids in platforms and vinyl, models in vintage slip dresses and combat boots, DJs carrying record bags, artists with cameras documenting everything. Titania herself led the procession like a priestess, wearing a long dress made from scarves and fabric scraps, layers of color that moved like water when she walked. Mercury stayed close to her side, wide-eyed and grateful. He wore white jeans, white t-shirt, white sneakers, like he was trying to stay clean in a dirty world. "The full moon is about release," Titania announced to her followers as they wound through the paths. "About letting go of what no longer serves us. Tonight we honor the goddess, the feminine, the creative force. We dance under the sky and remember that we're animals, not machines. We're alive, not corporate drones shuffling to our cubicles." Her followers murmured agreement, already high on anticipation and whatever substances they'd ingested before leaving. Someone carried a boombox playing trip-hop. Someone else had brought wine in a leather bag. They found a spot in the ramble, not far from where Bottom's crew was rehearsing, though neither group knew the other was there yet. Titania spread blankets on the ground and lit candles and glass votives, creating a circle of light. Her people arranged themselves around her, ready for whatever ritual or party or experience she'd planned. This was what she did best: create moments, manufacture magic, turn the ordinary into the sacred. From across the park, Oberon watched through the trees. He'd arrived earlier with a smaller crew, just 5 or 6 of his most trusted people. Puck, of course, a DJ named Moth, 2 bouncers who looked like they could break you in half but moved with surprising grace, and a few others, night creatures who preferred shadows to spotlight. "There she is," Oberon said quietly, his eyes fixed on the circle of candlelight where Titania held court, playing goddess again. "She does it well," Puck observed, crouching beside him. "You have to admit, she's got presence. Presence isn't the issue. That boy is the issue." Oberon pointed at Mercury, glowing white in the darkness. "He's too young for this world. She knows it. She's keeping him like a pet, like something to prove she's still capable of nurturing. So what's the play?" Oberon reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial, no bigger than a film canister. Inside was liquid, faintly luminescent in the darkness. "You know what this is?" Puck's eyes widened. Is that the real thing? Not the chemical shit everyone's passing around. This is old school, pharmaceutical grade from before they made it illegal. Pure MDMA, liquid form. One drop and whoever takes it falls in love with the next person they see. Not literally, obviously, but chemically. Serotonin flood, oxytocin release, the full bonding experience. That's either genius or insane. Both, Oberon agreed. Here's what you're going to do. Wait until Titania falls asleep. She always does at these things, after the ritual, after the wine. Put a drop on her lips. Make sure the first thing she sees when she wakes up is something ridiculous. Something that will snap her out of this Earth Mother phase. Then get the boy away from her. Send him home to Indiana or wherever he came from. Puck took the vial, holding it up to catch the moonlight. And what if something goes wrong? You're Puck, Oberon said with a slight smile. Something always goes wrong when you're involved. That's why I trust you. You know how to improvise. At exactly 11:30 p.m., Hermia and Lysander entered Central Park at East 72nd Street, carrying backpacks stuffed with whatever they deemed essential for their escape. For Hermia, this meant clothes, her journal, photographs, a Walkman with mixtapes Lysander had made her. For Lysander, it meant his leather jacket, cigarettes, a dog-eared copy of On the Road, and $300 in cash he'd been saving from promoting club nights. We cut through to the west side, Lysander said, studying the park map posted near the entrance. It's basically a straight shot. We'll be at Port Authority by 12:30, on a bus by 1. Easy. But Central Park at night was never easy. The paths that seemed straightforward by day became a labyrinth in darkness. Streetlights created islands of illumination separated by vast seas of shadow. The sounds changed too. No longer children's laughter and street musicians, but instead the rustle of unseen creatures, the distant wail of sirens, voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They walked quickly at first, Hermia's hand tight in Lysander's, their footsteps echoing on the paved path. But then Lysander, always one to take the scenic route, suggested cutting through the ramble. It's faster, he insisted, and more private. The main paths have cops sometimes, park enforcement. We don't want anyone asking questions. So they plunged into the ramble where the paths became dirt and the trees closed overhead like a ceiling. Almost immediately they were lost. The trails branched and forked, doubled back on themselves. Hermia's anxiety spiked with each turn. Do you actually know where we're going? She asked. Of course, Lysander lied. I come here all the time. He didn't. Nobody came to the ramble at night unless they were looking for something specific. Drugs, sex, solitude, or trouble. The darkness was complete here. The city's ambient light blocked by the dense canopy. They had only Lysander's lighter to guide them, its weak flame casting jumping shadows. Behind them, about 10 minutes back, came Demetrius and Helena. Demetrius strode with purpose, his jaw set, his corporate determination applied to this new problem. Find Hermia. Bring her back. Solve this situation like you'd solve a logistics issue at work. Helena struggled to keep up in her platform shoes, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Demetrius, please, slow down, she called. I can't see where I'm going. Then go home, he snapped without turning around. I didn't ask you to come. But he had, she thought bitterly. He'd asked her to help find Hermia, and now that she was here, struggling and suffering, he couldn't even spare her a kind word. Still, she followed, because what else could she do? Turn back and admit that she was chasing something that would never be hers. That was a truth she wasn't ready to face. They entered the ramble from a different path. Demetrius charging ahead like he was late for a meeting, Helena stumbling after him. Within minutes, they too were disoriented, the trails all looking the same in the darkness. Puck watched all of this unfold with growing delight. He'd been moving through the park on his bike, taking shortcuts that only the hardcore cyclists knew, popping wheelies over roots and rocks. He'd seen the young couple, clearly running away from something. He'd seen the angry businessman and the sad girl trailing him. And now he saw them all converging on the same section of the park, where Titania's circle glowed with candlelight. and Bottom's crew rehearsed their terrible play. "This is too good," Puck muttered to himself, grinning in the darkness. "This is a gift from the chaos gods." He pedaled back to where Oberon waited and reported what he'd seen. "We've got lovers in the woods, boss. Young couple running away, another guy chasing them, and a girl chasing him. It's like a soap opera stumbled into our territory." Oberon's interest piqued. "Did you take care of Titania?" "Not yet. She's still awake, doing her goddess thing. But I've been thinking, maybe we have some fun with these civilians first. Test out the potion." Oberon considered this. The night was young, and chaos had its own appeal. "Fine, but be surgical about it. 1 drop, and make sure the first person they see is someone who wants them. We're causing mischief, not trauma." "Got it," Puck said, already pedaling away into the darkness, the vial secure in his pocket. Back in the ramble, Hermia and Lysander had stopped to rest on a fallen log. They were hopelessly lost now. Both of them knew it, though neither wanted to admit it. Lysander's lighter was running low on fluid. Hermia's feet hurt in her Doc Martens. The romantic adventure of running away had given way to the reality of being lost in the woods at midnight. "Maybe we should just find our way back to the street," Hermia suggested. "Get a cab to Port Authority." "We're almost through," Lysander insisted, though he had no idea if this was true. "Just a little further." A sound in the bushes made them both freeze. Something was moving through the undergrowth, branches snapping, leaves rustling. For a moment they imagined all the urban legends: the park murderer, the escaped mental patient, the ghost of the ramble. But it was just Demetrius, emerging from the trees like an angry businessman who'd taken a wrong turn on the way to a meeting. He saw them, and his face twisted with triumph and rage. "Hermia," he said, "your father is worried sick. You're coming back with me." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Hermia shot back, standing up. Even at 5'2", she had the presence of someone much larger. "I don't love you, Demetrius. I never will. Accept it and move on. You're throwing your life away for this club promoter, this nobody?" Lysander stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Watch it. Or what? You'll bore me to death with stories about DJ sets." They were squaring up now, 2 men who'd never thrown a punch in their lives but were willing to start. Hermia stepped between them, her hands up. "Stop it. Both of you. Demetrius, go home. We're leaving the city and there's nothing you can do about it." Helena chose that moment to crash through the bushes, her dress torn, her hair wild with leaves and twigs. She saw the tableau, Hermia and Lysander together. Demetrius focused entirely on Hermia, and something inside her broke. "You don't even want him!" Helena screamed at Hermia. "Why do you get to be loved by 2 men when you don't want either? What's wrong with me? What's so terrible about me that you can't even look at me, Demetrius? I'm here. I've always been here. I loved you first." The words hung in the night air, raw and desperate. Even Demetrius looked uncomfortable, finally seeing her distress. "Helena, go home," he said quietly. "This isn't about you." "Everything is about me," she sobbed. "I'm the one suffering. I'm the one who can't eat, can't sleep, can't think about anything but you. Use me like a dog. Kick me, I'll still follow. I'm that pathetic." In the trees above them, Puck watched this beautiful disaster unfold and felt his heart sing with joy. This was better than he'd imagined. These people were already in chaos. All he had to do was add a little chemical enhancement and watch the whole thing spiral into magnificent disaster. Hermia grabbed Lysander's hand and pulled him away, back into the darkness of the paths. "We're leaving, now. This is insane." They disappeared into the trees, leaving Demetrius standing there with Helena sobbing at his feet. He looked down at her with something like pity, then disgust. Not at her, but at the whole situation, at himself for being the kind of man who could inspire this level of desperate devotion without feeling anything in return. "Helena, I can't," he started, but she cut him off. "Just go. Chase her, that's what you want. I'll find my own way home." And so Demetrius did what he always did, pursued what he couldn't have. He crashed through the underbrush after Hermia and Lysander, leaving Helena alone in the darkness. She collapsed onto the ground, her expensive dress soaking up dirt and moss, and cried like she hadn't cried since she was a child. Great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. The sound of a heart breaking in real time. Puck dropped from a low-hanging branch and landed softly near her. He'd been following the drama, delighted by every moment. But seeing Helena's genuine anguish gave him pause. Even chaos had its limits. He approached quietly and Helena looked up, startled, her face streaked with mascara and tears. "Rough night?" Puck asked. She laughed, a bitter sound. "You could say that." "Who are you?" "Nobody, just a guy on a bike. You look like you could use some water." He offered her his water bottle and she took it gratefully, drinking deeply. "I'm pathetic," she said. "Following a man who doesn't want me. Being the sad friend. I'm a cliché." "Nah," Puck said. "You're just human. Love makes idiots of everyone. Trust me, I've seen it all." He studied her for a moment, an idea forming. "You know what? Sit here for a minute. Catch your breath. Things might look different soon." He left her there and went deeper into the ramble, following the sound of Demetrius crashing through the woods. The businessman was lost now, completely turned around, calling Hermia's name like a man possessed. Eventually exhausted and frustrated, he sat down heavily against a tree, his expensive clothes ruined with dirt and sweat. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to himself. "I'm a VP at Calvin Klein. I drive a BMW. I have a rent-controlled apartment in Tribeca. Why am I chasing some girl through the woods like a crazy person?" But he was tired. So tired. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the night pressed down on him like a weight. His eyes drifted closed despite himself. Puck watched from the shadows, waiting. When Demetrius's breathing slowed and deepened into sleep, Puck approached silently. He pulled out Oberon's vial, let a single drop fall onto Demetrius's closed eyelids. The liquid shimmered for a moment before absorbing into his skin. "Sweet dreams, corporate boy," Puck whispered. "When you wake up, the first person you see, you're going to love like your life depends on it. Let's see if we can't fix this love triangle into something more interesting." The plan was simple. Make sure Helena found Demetrius. Make sure she was the first thing he saw. Problem solved. Everyone happy. But Puck, for all his skill at chaos, sometimes forgot that chaos doesn't take instructions. Not far away in their clearing, Bottom's crew was deep into rehearsal. They'd strung up battery-powered camping lanterns, creating a makeshift stage that looked like a crime scene crossed with a yard sale. Snout's wall stood proud in the center, a shopping cart draped with chicken wire and spray-painted cardboard that somehow managed to be both ridiculous and oddly poignant. "From this point," Quince directed, holding a flashlight like a pointer, "Pyramus enters from stage left. That's over there, Bottom. Thisbe enters from stage right. Flute, that's you. You approach the wall, you see each other through the chink." "The what?" Flute asked nervously. "The gap. The hole in the wall. Snout, you're going to be the wall, so you need to make a gap with your fingers." Snout held up his hand, making a circle with his thumb and forefinger. "Like this? Perfect, Bottom, Flute. You deliver your lines to each other through Snout's fingers." Bottom, who'd changed into his costume, a purple velvet blazer from a thrift store and leather pants, struck a dramatic pose. "This is genius," he said. "The wall as metaphor. The wall as character. It's very Berlin, very fall of communism. We're making a statement about barriers." "We're doing a love story," Quince corrected patiently. Flute stood miserably in his costume, a torn prom dress from the 80s, his face painted with drugstore makeup that made him look less like a beautiful maiden and more like a troubled drag queen at her first show. "I look ridiculous," he moaned. "You look brave," Starveling said encouragingly. "You look like an artist willing to take risks." They ran through the scene and it was terrible. Beautifully, catastrophically terrible. Bottom overacted every line, his gestures so big he nearly knocked over a lantern. Flute forgot his words and had to read from the crumpled script. Snout stood stiffly as the wall, his arm going numb from holding up his fingers. The others watched with a mixture of pride and horror. "This is going to change performance art," Bottom declared during a break. "This is going to make us legends." "This is going to get us arrested," Snug muttered, but nobody heard him. Puck, cycling past on his way back to Oberon, caught a glimpse of the rehearsal and stopped dead. He stared at Bottom in his ridiculous costume, declaiming about love and death to a shopping cart. And an idea struck him with the force of revelation. "Oh no," Puck said to himself, grinning. "Oh yes." He thought about Titania, still holding court in her candle-lit circle. He thought about Oberon's instructions to make her fall for something ridiculous. And here was ridiculous in its purest form, a performance artist from Queens in a purple blazer, taking himself far too seriously. The plan crystallized instantly. Dose Titania as instructed, but make sure the first thing she saw was Bottom. The queen of downtown nightlife falls for a bridge and tunnel theater nerd. It was perfect. It was cruel. It was exactly the kind of chaos Puck lived for. Elsewhere in the ramble, Hermia and Lysander had finally stopped running. They were exhausted, scratched by branches, completely disoriented. Lysander's lighter had died. They couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. "We should just stay here until sunrise," Hermia said, her voice small. "Try to find our way out when we can see." "I'm sorry," Lysander said. "This was supposed to be romantic, an adventure, not a disaster." She kissed him softly. "It's still an adventure. We're together. That's what matters." They settled against a tree, wrapped in each other's arms for warmth. Within minutes, exhausted by emotion and exertion, they both fell asleep. Above them, the moon hung full and bright, filtering through the leaves. The city hummed its endless song. And in the ramble, as midnight passed into the early hours of October morning, magic and chemistry and chaos prepared to collide in ways that would make the night unforgettable for everyone involved. In Titania's circle, the ritual was winding down. Wine bottles lay empty on the blankets. Someone had brought a small drum and was playing a hypnotic rhythm. The boombox still played, but quieter now. Ambient Brian Eno, music that sounded like the space between thoughts. Titania's followers sprawled in various states of consciousness, some dozing, some staring at the moon, some locked in intense whispered conversations about art and meaning and the universe. Titania herself reclined against a tree, Mercury's head resting in her lap. She stroked his hair absently, the gesture maternal and possessive at once. He'd fallen asleep an hour ago, exhausted by the strangeness of it all. He was so young, she thought, so unspoiled. The city hadn't hardened him yet, hadn't taught him that everyone wants something, that nothing comes without a price. "You remind me of who I used to be," she whispered to his sleeping form. "Before I learned to be hard, before I became a queen." Her own eyes grew heavy. The wine, the moon, the late hour, all conspired to pull her towards sleep. She fought it for a while, wanting to stay present, to witness the magic of this gathering. But eventually, inevitably, her eyes closed and her breathing deepened. Puck had been watching from the trees, patient as a hunter. When he was sure she was truly asleep, he crept forward on silent feet. The others in the circle didn't notice him. They were too far gone in their own experiences. He knelt beside Titania, pulled out the vial, and carefully placed a single drop on her lips. The liquid caught the moonlight for a moment before disappearing. Titania stirred but didn't wake. Puck grinned and melted back into the shadows. Now came the fun part, finding Bottom and making sure he was the first thing she saw. But as Puck moved through the woods, he came upon Hermia and Lysander sleeping beneath their tree. They looked peaceful, young, innocent in a way that reminded him uncomfortably of Mercury. For a moment he considered leaving them alone. Then he remembered Demetrius sleeping nearby, remembered Helena wandering somewhere in the dark, heartbroken and alone. The geometry of the situation was all wrong. Two men loved Hermia, neither loved Helena. Simple fix. Make one of the men love Helena instead. The problem was that Puck had terrible facial recognition in the dark. Both Lysander and Demetrius were about the same age. Both wore dark clothes. Both had that Upper East Side prep school look even when they were trying to dress down. Puck approached the sleeping Lysander, assumed he was Demetrius, and placed a drop of the potion on his eyelids. "There we go," Puck muttered. "Now when you wake up and see Helena, everything balances out. I'm like a relationship accountant." He was so pleased with himself that he didn't bother to check his work. He simply cycled off into the night looking for Bottom. The rehearsal had taken a break. Bottom had wandered away from the others, partly to stay in character, partly because he'd eaten bad Chinese food for lunch and needed to find a secluded spot. He crashed through the underbrush, muttering his lines under his breath. "Thisbe, my love, I come to meet thee at yon tomb. No, wait. Thisbe, fairest among women, that's not it either." Puck watched him stumble around and felt pure joy. This was the target. This ridiculous man in his thrift store costume, taking himself so seriously, completely unaware of how absurd he looked. Puck wanted to do something memorable, something that would make this night legendary in the annals of downtown chaos. In his messenger bag, Puck carried all sorts of useful items: flyers for parties, markers for tagging, a disposable camera, and, crucially, leftover supplies from a Club Kid fashion show he'd helped with last month, including a full costume head, a mascot-style creation made from papier-mâché and fake fur. It was supposed to be a horse, or maybe a dog. The artist had never been entirely clear, but it was definitely animalish, with long ears and a protruding snout. "Oh, this is too perfect," Puck whispered. He followed Bottom into the bushes and waited until the man was vulnerable, pants down, taking care of business. Then Puck emerged from the shadows. "Hey man, sorry to interrupt, but there are cops coming through. They're clearing the park." Bottom's eyes went wide. "Cops? Now? We haven't even performed yet." "Yeah, someone called in a noise complaint. You might want to wrap up here and, hey, if you really want to avoid them, I've got something that could help. Disguise." In his panic and desperation, Bottom didn't question why a stranger on a bike would have a disguise ready. He just accepted the giant papier-mâché head that Puck offered him and pulled it on over his own head without thinking. It was immediately claustrophobic and disorienting. The eye holes didn't quite line up with his actual eyes. The thing smelled like glue and mildew. But Bottom was committed now, stumbling back toward his crew in this absurd headpiece, looking like a community theater mascot that had wandered off set. "Guys," he called, his voice muffled by the mask. "Guys, we have to." Flute saw him first and screamed. Actually screamed. A high-pitched shriek that sent birds exploding from the trees. "What the hell is that?" Snout yelled, grabbing the shopping cart wall like a weapon. "It's me, Bottom. Some guy said there were cops." But they weren't listening. They were running. All of them, scattering into the night like extras in a horror movie. Quince dropped his clipboard. Starveling left an entire bag of costumes. Snug actually climbed a tree in his panic. Within 30 seconds, Bottom stood alone in the clearing, wearing a giant animal head, surrounded by abandoned props and camping lanterns. "Guys," he called. "Guys, it's just a mask. Come back." But they were gone, crashed through the ramble like the park really was full of cops. Bottom pulled off the headpiece and stared at it. In the lantern light, he could see it was actually kind of well made, artistic even. The ears were impressive. "Huh," he said. "This is actually pretty cool, very avant-garde. Maybe we should incorporate masks into the performance. Very ritualistic, very bread and puppet theater." He put it back on, decided he liked how it felt, how it transformed him. This was method acting. This was commitment to craft. He started running through his lines again, gesturing dramatically with his arms, completely unaware of how insane he looked. And that's how Titania found him. She'd woken up suddenly, the potion already working its chemical magic through her system. Her pupils were dilated. Her skin felt hypersensitive. Everything looked sharper, brighter, more significant. Mercury still slept in her lap, but she gently moved him aside and stood up, drawn by some instinct toward the sound of Bottom's muffled voice carrying through the trees. She walked toward the clearing like a sleepwalker, and when she saw Bottom, this strange creature, half man, half animal, declaiming about love in the moonlight. Something in her brain clicked into place with the force of chemical certainty. Beautiful, she thought. Magnificent. This is what I've been missing. This raw, unfiltered artistic commitment. This creature who doesn't care what anyone thinks. Stop, Titania commanded, stepping into the clearing. Her voice had that quality that made people obey without thinking, the voice of someone used to being a queen. Bottom turned, the animal head making the gesture comical and somehow threatening at once. Oh, hello, have you seen my crew? They ran off. And we're supposed to be... You're magnificent, Titania interrupted, moving closer. What are you? I'm an actor. A performance artist, actually. We're doing guerrilla theater. It's very experimental. You're a vision, she said, and she meant it. The potion had rewired her perception completely. Where anyone else would see a ridiculous man in a homemade mask, she saw raw artistic genius, vulnerability, beauty. Tell me your name. Nick Bottom. But people call me Bottom, she repeated, tasting the word. Perfect, simple, honest. Not like these pretentious downtown names everyone uses. You're real. Bottom felt confused but flattered. This woman was stunning, clearly important, looking at him like he was the most interesting person she'd ever encountered. Thanks. We're trying to make a statement about... Sit, she commanded, gesturing to a fallen log. Rest. You've been working so hard. Your dedication is inspiring. She guided him to sit, then called out to her crew. Moth, Mustard Seed, get over here. Two of her followers materialized from the shadows. Moth, a DJ with sleeve tattoos and a shaved head, and Mustard Seed, a tiny club kid with butterfly clips in her hair and glitter covering every inch of exposed skin. This is Bottom, Titania announced. He's under my protection now. Bring him water. Bring him food. Whatever he needs, he gets. Moth and Mustard Seed exchanged glances that clearly said their queen had lost her mind, but they knew better than to argue. Within minutes they'd brought water bottles, energy bars, even someone's jacket for Bottom to sit on. This is really not necessary, Bottom protested, though secretly he was loving it. This was the recognition he'd always deserved. Finally, someone who understood his artistic vision. It's absolutely necessary, Titania said, sitting beside him, closer than was strictly appropriate. Artists like you need to be cherished, protected. The world tries to crush genuine creativity. Not on my watch. She reached up and gently touched the animal head. May I? Oh, sure. Bottom pulled it off, his hair sticking up with static, his face flushed and sweaty. Titania looked at his actual human face, middle-aged, ordinary, a little doughy, and the potion made sure she saw something else entirely. Soulful eyes, expressive features, the face of a true artist who'd suffered for his craft. Beautiful, she whispered. Meanwhile, Helena had been wandering the ramble for what felt like hours, lost and miserable. Her platforms had given her blisters. Her dress was ruined. Mascara had dried in tracks down her face. She'd hit rock bottom and was considering just sitting down and waiting for sunrise when she heard voices. She followed the sound and found the clearing where Hermia and Lysander had fallen asleep. Except Hermia was no longer there. She'd woken up needing to pee and wandered off to find a private spot. Only Lysander remained, sleeping peacefully against the tree. Helena approached cautiously. She'd known Lysander for years. He'd dated her roommate briefly. They ran in the same circles. He was a good guy, she thought. Better than Demetrius in a lot of ways. At least he was capable of actual love, even if it wasn't directed at her. Lysander? She said softly, not wanting to startle him but also desperate for help. Lysander, wake up. I'm lost. I need... Lysander's eyes opened. The potion, which had been waiting for this exact moment, flooded his system with chemical certainty. The first face he saw was Helena's, tear-streaked, desperate, vulnerable. And suddenly she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Helena, he breathed, sitting up like he'd been shocked. Oh my God, Helena! Yeah, it's me. Listen, do you know the way out of here? I've been walking in circles. You're gorgeous, he interrupted, standing up quickly, moving toward her. How have I never noticed? How have I been so blind? Helena took a step back, confused and frightened. What are you talking about? You're with Hermia. You're literally running away together. Hermia. Lysander said the name like he was trying to remember someone from elementary school. That was a mistake. Puppy love. Not real. But this, he gestured between them, this is real. Helena, I'm in love with you. You're in love with... Lysander, are you high? Did you take something? I'm high on you, he said, and he actually meant it. The potion had convinced him completely. Every memory was being rewritten in real time. Hermia was a mistake, a distraction. Helena had always been the one. Run away with me, not to Providence, somewhere better. Montreal, we'll start over, just us. Helena's confusion turned to anger. This was a joke, a cruel prank. Hermia must have put him up to it. Mock the pathetic friend. Make fun of her desperate love for Demetrius. This isn't funny, she said, her voice shaking. I'm not in the mood for whatever game this is. It's not a game. Stop it, she shouted. Stop mocking me. Isn't it enough that Demetrius doesn't want me? Now you have to torture me too? She turned and ran, crashing back into the underbrush. Lysander immediately gave chase, calling her name, professing his newly discovered love, absolutely convinced that she was his soulmate and he'd been an idiot not to see it before. Hermia returned from her bathroom break to find Lysander gone. Lysander, she called, looking around the empty clearing. Lysander, where are you? Panic crept up her spine. Had he abandoned her? Had he changed his mind? She started searching, calling his name, getting more frantic with each passing minute. Not far away, Demetrius was also waking up. His neck hurt from sleeping against the tree. His suit was ruined. His phone, one of those new Motorola flip phones that cost a fortune, was dead. He was disoriented, angry, and still under the effects of Puck's potion, though he didn't know it yet. He heard someone calling a name through the trees. Following the sound, he found Hermia looking desperate and frightened. Hermia, he said, relief flooding through him. Thank God. I've been looking everywhere. Have you seen Lysander? She interrupted. He was just here and now he's gone. Forget Lysander, Demetrius said. We need to get out of this park. It's dangerous. Let me take you home. I'm not going home. I'm finding Lysander. She pushed past him, and Demetrius followed, still trying to convince her, still trying to play the role of rescuer. Neither of them noticed Helena running through the trees nearby, or Lysander chasing after her, professing his chemically induced love. The ramble had become a maze of crossed paths and missed connections, of people looking for the wrong things and running from the right ones. Above it all, the moon watched with cold indifference, and somewhere in the trees, Puck realized he'd made a terrible, wonderful mistake. Oberon heard the chaos before he saw it. Voices raised in anger and confusion, people crashing through undergrowth, the sound of hearts breaking in real time. He emerged from his watching spot to find Puck cycling in circles, laughing so hard he could barely stay on his bike. What did you do? Oberon demanded. I fixed the love triangle. Puck gasped between laughs. Well, I thought I did. Turns out I dosed the wrong guy. Now both men are chasing Helena and Hermia's losing her mind. You dosed the wrong... Oberon grabbed Puck's handlebars, stopping the bike. You were supposed to make the businessman love Helena. One man for each woman. Balance. Yeah, about that. They all look the same in the dark. Preppy white boys in dark clothing. It's like trying to tell pigeons apart. Oberon pinched the bridge of his nose. And Titania? Puck's grin widened. Oh, that one went perfectly. She's currently in love with a performance artist wearing a donkey head. She's treating him like a rock star. It's the most beautiful disaster I've ever created. Despite himself, Oberon felt a smile tugging at his lips. A donkey head? Well, technically it might be a horse. The artist wasn't clear. But yes, papier-mâché animal head, and she thinks he's the second coming of Andy Warhol. The chaos crescendoed nearby as all four lovers converged on the same clearing, the one where Bottom's crew had abandoned their props. Helena burst in first, still running from Lysander. Then Lysander appeared breathless, still professing his love. Then Hermia arrived, furious and confused. And finally Demetrius, trying to play peacemaker. "Helena, please just listen to me," Lysander begged. "What Hermia and I had was nothing compared to what I feel for you." Hermia stopped dead. "What you and I had was nothing. We were literally running away together an hour ago." "That was before I understood," Lysander said, his eyes never leaving Helena. "Before I saw clearly." "This is insane," Helena said. "Both of you, stop it. I don't know what you're on, but this isn't funny anymore." "I'm not on anything," Lysander insisted. "I'm just in love with you," Demetrius finished, pushing past Hermia to reach Helena. "Like I am? Helena, I've been an idiot. I was chasing the wrong person. You're the one I want." Helena looked between them, both men staring at her with intense, unnatural focus. This was worse than being ignored. This was mockery, cruelty dressed up as affection. "I get it," she said quietly. "This is revenge, right? For being pathetic, for following Demetrius around like a lost dog. You all decided to teach me a lesson." "No," both men said simultaneously. "We're serious," Demetrius added. "Helena, I treated you terribly. I'm sorry. Give me another chance." "Give me a chance," Lysander countered. "I saw you first. I loved you first. Tonight, I mean. My love is fresher, purer." Hermia grabbed Lysander's arm, spinning him around. "Your love is fresher. We've been together for 6 months. We were running away. What is wrong with you?" "I was confused," Lysander said, shaking her off. "You're like a sister to me, Hermia. I care about you, but—" "A sister?" Hermia's voice went dangerously quiet. "A sister?" Helena started backing away from all of them. "This is a setup. Hermia, you put them up to this. You're tired of me being the sad friend, so you—" "I didn't do anything," Hermia shouted. "I'm as confused as you are. My boyfriend just told me I'm like a sister to him." "Maybe because you are," Helena shot back, years of repressed resentment suddenly surfacing. "Maybe because you're a spoiled little rich girl who's never had to work for anything. Men just fall at your feet and you don't even want them. You have Lysander, your father wants you to marry Demetrius, and what do I have? Nothing. I've always had nothing." "You think my life is easy?" Hermia advanced on her, small but fierce. "My father's trying to force me into marriage or a convent. I'm running away from everything I've ever known." "At least you have options," Helena screamed. "At least people see you." The two women were face to face now, years of friendship cracking under the pressure of this impossible night. The men stood between them, both trying to protect Helena, which only made Hermia angrier. "Oh, I see," Hermia said, her voice acid. "This is about height, isn't it? You always had that over me. Tall, blonde Helena. Model Helena. Poor Hermia, so short, so dark. That's why they both want you now, right? Because you're tall? This has nothing to do with—" "Everything has to do with it. You've always looked down on me. Literally." From the shadows, Oberon watched this beautiful disaster and felt a twinge of guilt. These were real people, not chess pieces. Their pain was genuine, even if the circumstances were artificial. "We need to fix this," he told Puck. "Now you want to fix it? I thought we were teaching Titania a lesson." "We are, but these kids didn't sign up for our war." Oberon pulled out another vial, this one filled with clear liquid. "Antidote. You dosed the right guy this time. The one in the suit, the businessman. When he wakes up, he sees Helena. Everything goes back to normal. And the other one? Lysander? We let him sleep it off. 8 hours, the potion wears off naturally. He'll wake up, see Hermia, remember why he loved her in the first place." In the clearing, the argument had escalated. Hermia had taken off her shoe and was threatening Lysander with it. Helena was crying again, convinced this was all an elaborate joke. The two men were still professing their love while trying to avoid being hit with Doc Martens. "Everybody stop!" Demetrius finally shouted. "Just everyone stop talking. Helena, let's walk, just you and me. Let's get out of this park and figure this out somewhere sane." "I'll come too," Lysander said immediately. "No!" Hermia grabbed him. "You're staying here. We're talking." They split off into pairs, Demetrius and Helena heading one direction, Hermia physically dragging Lysander another. Within minutes, both groups were lost again in the ramble's maze of paths. Puck and Oberon moved through the shadows, tracking them. The night was far from over and the chaos was reaching its peak. Somewhere in the distance, Titania's voice could be heard, singing to Bottom. Thunder rumbled over Jersey, promising rain, and the moon, that ancient witness to human folly, continued its slow arc across the sky. 3 a.m., the hour when the city's pulse slowed to its lowest point, when even Manhattan grew almost quiet. The clubs had closed or transformed into after-hours speakeasies. The bars had kicked out their last drunks. Street cleaners swept debris from sidewalks. The only people awake were insomniacs, shift workers, and those who'd been caught in something they couldn't escape. In Titania's clearing, Bottom reclined on a nest of blankets and jackets that her followers had created for him. The animal head sat beside him like a discarded crown. Titania herself lay with her head on his chest, one arm draped possessively across his middle. Her crew sat at a respectful distance, confused and concerned, but too loyal to intervene. "Tell me about your art," Titania murmured, tracing patterns on his purple velvet blazer. "Tell me everything." Bottom, who'd been confused at first, had now fully embraced this bizarre situation. A beautiful, powerful woman was obsessed with him. Finally, someone who understood his genius. "Well," he said, warming to his favorite subject, "I'm really interested in the intersection of classical theater and postmodern performance, taking these ancient texts and making them relevant to contemporary urban experience." "Brilliant," Titania breathed. "You're a visionary. I mean, most people don't get it. They think it's pretentious or whatever. But art should challenge people, you know? It should make them uncomfortable." "Exactly. You understand. You're not like these downtown phonies with their trust funds and their gallery connections. You're authentic." Bottom felt a flicker of discomfort. He was literally a guy from Queens, pretending to be more sophisticated than he was. But he pushed it down. "I try to stay true to my roots," he said vaguely. Mercury, who'd been watching this whole interaction with growing unease, finally approached. "Titania," he said softly, "maybe we should go. It's late. You have that meeting tomorrow with the promoter from the tunnel." She waved him away without looking. "Cancel it. Bottom needs me. He's been working so hard on his performance. Artists need support, need nurturing. But, Mercury, go find Moth. Tell him to bring more water. Bottom must be thirsty." Mercury retreated, hurt blooming across his face. This was what he'd been to her. A project, a pet. And now she'd found a new one, was discarding him like last season's fashion. He wandered to the edge of the clearing, considering his options. He could leave, go back to Port Authority, catch a bus back to Indiana, cut his losses, but something kept him there. Maybe loyalty. Maybe hope that Titania would snap out of whatever this was. Maybe just nowhere else to go at 3 a.m. Oberon watched from the trees, and for the first time that night he felt something other than anger toward Titania. He felt pity. The potion had reduced her to this, a parody of herself, fawning over a man who was so clearly beneath her usual standards. She looked desperate, clinging, everything she'd never been. "This has gone far enough," Oberon said to Puck. "But it's working, right? She'll give up the boy now. Mercury's right there, practically begging to be sent home. At what cost?" Oberon gestured toward Titania. "Look at her. This isn't teaching her a lesson. This is cruelty." Puck was quiet for a moment. "Since when do you care about cruelty?" "Since I remembered why we were together in the first place." Oberon pulled out another vial, the antidote. "We need to end this, all of it. The lovers, Titania, everything. Dawn's coming. People need to wake up in their own lives." Meanwhile, Hermia had finally gotten Lysander to stop walking. They stood in a small clearing, facing each other like boxers in a ring. She was furious, hurt, confused. He was still under the potion's influence, but starting to feel the edges of doubt creeping in. "Explain it to me," Hermia demanded. "Explain how you go from loving me to loving Helena in the space of an hour. I saw clearly for the first time. Like I'd been sleepwalking and suddenly woke up. We've been together for 6 months. We were running away together. We were going to build a life. I know, and I care about you, I do, but what? But Helena's taller? Prettier? What?" Lysander struggled to articulate something that made no sense even to him. The potion insisted Helena was his soulmate, but his memories, his history, all pointed to Hermia. The cognitive dissonance was making his head pound. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I don't know what's happening to me." Hermia's anger cracked, revealing the hurt underneath. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice small. "Is this how you really feel and you were just too cowardly to say it before?" "No, maybe, I don't know." He sat down heavily on a rock, put his head in his hands. "Something's wrong. I feel wrong. Like I'm watching myself from outside my body." Not far away, Helena had managed to lose Demetrius in the maze of paths. She sat on a bench near one of the Ramble's small streams, exhausted beyond measure. Her feet were bleeding from the blisters. Her dress was torn. She'd cried so much she felt dehydrated. Wrung out, empty, she heard footsteps and turned, ready to run again. But it was just Demetrius. He looked as exhausted as she felt, his suit ruined, his corporate polish completely gone. "Can we just sit?" he asked. "No declarations, no drama. Can we just sit for a minute?" She nodded, too tired to argue. He sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a long moment neither spoke. The stream burbled, leaves rustled, the city hummed its constant background note. "I'm sorry," Demetrius finally said. "Not about tonight. I mean, yes, about tonight too, but about before. About using you. About treating you like you didn't matter." Helena looked at him, searching for the trick, the joke. But he looked sincere. Miserable even. "I convinced myself I loved Hermia," he continued. "She was a challenge, a prize to win. And you were always just there, easy. I took that for granted." He rubbed his face. "That's not love. That's ego." "So what is this now?" Helena asked. "Another ego trip? You can't have Hermia, so you'll settle for me?" "Maybe," he admitted. I don't know what I feel right now. My head's all messed up. But I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise. But it was honest. Maybe the first honest thing he'd said all night. Helena felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Above them, the sky was beginning to change. Not quite dawn, but the promise of it. That subtle shift from black to dark blue that happened around 4 a.m. The stars were fading. The moon was setting behind the buildings on the west side. Puck moved through the ramble like a shadow, the antidote vial in one hand, his bike abandoned somewhere in the bushes. He found Demetrius first, still sitting with Helena on the bench. Both were quiet now, exhausted, staring at the water. Demetrius's eyes were starting to close despite himself, his head nodding forward. "Sleep," Puck whispered from the darkness. "Just sleep." As if commanded, Demetrius slumped sideways on the bench, unconscious. Helena looked over, alarmed. "Demetrius," she shook him gently, but he was out completely. "Great. Perfect. Now I'm stuck in Central Park at 4 a.m. with an unconscious businessman." She didn't see Puck approach from behind, didn't feel the single drop of antidote placed on Demetrius's closed eyes. The liquid shimmered for a moment, then disappeared, beginning its work of unwinding the chemical knots the first potion had created. Puck moved on, searching for Lysander. He found him still with Hermia, sitting apart from each other, both miserable. Lysander was rubbing his temples like he had a migraine. Hermia hugged herself, shivering in the pre-dawn chill. "I think we should just go back," Hermia said finally. "Whatever this is, this night, this insanity, we should just go back to the city, to normal, figure things out in daylight." "Yeah," Lysander agreed, relieved. "Yeah, okay." They stood, started walking, trying to find their way out. Within minutes they were separated again. Hermia took one path, Lysander another, both thinking the other was following. The Ramble's maze claimed them one final time. Puck found Lysander sitting against a tree, his head in his hands, and simply waited. The potion was already wearing off, naturally. 8 hours had nearly passed. Lysander's thoughts were becoming clearer, the artificial obsession with Helena fading like a bad drug trip. He felt sick, confused, like he was coming down with the flu, his eyes closed. He slumped against the tree, unconscious. "Sweet dreams," Puck said, though there was less glee in his voice now. The night had stopped being funny somewhere around the time he'd seen real pain in these people's eyes. Back at Titania's clearing, Oberon finally stepped out of the shadows. Her followers saw him and immediately tensed. This was the X, the king, the source of all the recent tension. Moth stood up, protective. "She doesn't want to see you," Moth said. "I know," Oberon replied quietly, "but I need to see her." He approached where Titania lay tangled with Bottom. She was awake, stroking Bottom's hair, whispering to him about art and truth and beauty. She didn't look up when Oberon's shadow fell across them. "Titania," Oberon said softly. "Go away," she murmured. "I'm busy. I found something real." Bottom, sensing tension, tried to sit up. "Hey man, I don't want any trouble." "You're fine," Oberon assured him. "This isn't about you." He knelt beside Titania, and she finally looked at him. Her pupils were still dilated, her expression dreamy and unfocused. Oberon felt a stab of guilt so sharp it was almost physical. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was angry, I was jealous, I was wrong." "You're always wrong," Titania said, but there was no heat in it. "That's your defining characteristic. Let me fix this." "There's nothing to fix. I'm happy. Bottom understands me. He's an artist. He's genuine." Oberon pulled out the antidote. "I need you to trust me. One more time." Something in his voice, in his eyes, cut through the chemical fog. Titania looked at him, really looked, and saw regret, vulnerability, the man she'd fallen for years ago before power and territory and pride had gotten in the way. "What did you do to me?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "Something I shouldn't have. Something I need to undo." She held his gaze for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Oberon placed a single drop of the antidote on her lips. She blinked, her expression shifting, the fog beginning to clear. And then she looked down at Bottom, really looked at him. Saw the purple velvet blazer, the receding hairline, the confused expression of a man who'd stumbled into something way over his head. Saw the animal head lying beside them like evidence of a crime. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh God, what did I—" "You were under the influence," Oberon said quickly. "You weren't yourself." Titania scrambled backward away from Bottom, horror and humiliation washing over her face. How long was I—" "A few hours, not long." Bottom, reading the room, grabbed his animal head and stood up. "So I'm guessing the vibe has changed. I'll go find my crew. Thanks for the— Yeah, I'm gonna go." He hurried away, clutching his mask, leaving Titania sitting in the wreckage of her dignity. Her followers kept their distance, unsure how to help. Mercury stayed furthest away, hurt and angry. "The boy," Oberon said gently. "Mercury, you were right about him. He needs to go home, but not because I commanded it, because it's what's best for him. The city will eat him alive." Titania looked over at Mercury, saw him clearly for the first time in weeks, saw his youth, his vulnerability, his desperate need for something she couldn't give him, safety, stability, a future that didn't involve after-hours clubs and chemical adventures. "I know," she said quietly. "I was trying to save him, but you can't save people from becoming who they're going to become." "No," Oberon agreed. "You can't." They sat together in the pre-dawn darkness, not touching but no longer enemies. The war was over, though neither had really won. Above them, the sky continued its slow transformation from black to blue to the first hints of pink. In various parts of the ramble, 4 young people slept. Hermia curled up under a tree, Lysander slumped against another, Helena still on the bench trying to stay awake, and Demetrius beside her, the antidote doing its quiet work. The city sounds were changing, shifting from night music to morning rhythm. Delivery trucks rumbled on distant streets. Bakeries fired up their ovens. The earliest commuters stumbled towards subway stations. The night people's world was ending. The day people's world was beginning. And in that liminal space between darkness and light, Everything that had gone wrong prepared to be, if not fixed, then at least survived. Dawn broke over Manhattan like a slow exhale. The sky transformed from navy to violet to rose gold, painting the clouds in colors that didn't have names. The city's skyline emerged from darkness like a photograph developing. Windows caught the first light and threw it back, turning glass towers into pillars of fire. It was the kind of morning that made you remember why people loved this impossible city, why they endured the rent and the crowds and the constant assault of noise and ambition. In the ramble, that first light filtered through the leaves like something sacred. Birds began their morning songs, not the pigeons that owned the city by day, but actual songbirds, warblers, and thrushes that lived in this manufactured wilderness. The air smelled different too, fresh and green, the night's closeness burned away by approaching sun. Hermia woke first, stiff and cold, her body aching from sleeping on the ground. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, or why. Then it came back in a rush. The argument with her father, the escape plan, Lysander's bizarre transformation, the whole nightmare night. She sat up, looked around the unfamiliar clearing, and felt panic rising. "Lysander!" she called. Her voice came out hoarse, broken by hours of crying and shouting. Lysander! Not far away he was also waking, his head pounding like he'd drunk an entire bottle of cheap vodka. His mouth tasted like metal and regret. He blinked in the growing light, trying to piece together what had happened. He remembered running away with Hermia. Then, nothing clear, just fragments. Helena's face, saying things that didn't make sense. The feeling of being outside his own body, watching himself behave like a stranger. "Hermia?" he called back, recognizing her voice. He stumbled toward the sound, pushing through bushes, and found her standing in the clearing, looking lost and scared. They stared at each other for a moment, both disheveled and dirty and exhausted. Then Hermia's face crumpled and she started crying. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet, defeated tears. "I thought you'd left me," she said. "I thought it was real, that you really didn't love me anymore." Lysander rushed to her, pulled her into his arms. "I don't know what happened," he said into her hair. "I don't remember most of it. It's like a dream, a bad trip. But I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "We should go home," Hermia said. "This was stupid. Running away was stupid. We can't escape my father by getting lost in Central Park. We'll figure something out," Lysander promised. "But yeah, let's get out of here first." On the bench by the stream, Demetrius opened his eyes to see Helena asleep beside him, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. Mascara dried in streams down her face. The antidote had done its work. The potion's effects were gone, and what remained was nothing. No burning obsession with Hermia. No artificial love for Helena. Just clarity, cold and complete. He looked at Helena and felt something he'd never felt for her before. Genuine affection. Not the chemicals of early romance. Not the obsession he'd mistaken for love with Hermia. Just simple, honest fondness for someone who'd shown him loyalty he didn't deserve. "Helena," he said gently, touching her shoulder. "Wake up." She jerked awake, disoriented and defensive. What's happening?" "Dawn," he said. "We made it through the night." She looked around, saw the morning light, felt relief so intense it was almost painful. "Thank God. I thought we'd be stuck in this park forever like some Greek myth, doomed to wander for eternity." "That would be hell," Demetrius agreed. Then, carefully, "Last night was insane. I said things that didn't make sense. Both Lysander and we were acting crazy. I don't know if it was stress or exhaustion or what, but—" "You don't have to explain," Helena interrupted. She didn't want to hear him take it back. Didn't want the humiliation of having him clarify that his declarations were temporary insanity. "Let's just forget about it. Go back to our lives. Pretend this never happened." "I don't want to forget all of it," Demetrius said. "I meant what I said about being sorry about how I treated you. That part was real." Helena looked at him, searching for the trick. But his eyes were clear, honest in the morning light. "Okay," she said finally. "Apology accepted. Can we please get out of this park now?" They stood, both groaning at their stiff muscles, and started walking. This time, with daylight to guide them, the paths made sense. Within 10 minutes they emerged onto Central Park West, blinking at the morning traffic, at joggers and dog walkers, and the reassuring normalcy of the city waking up. Bottom found his crew huddled near the entrance at West 77th Street. They looked shell-shocked, traumatized, like soldiers returning from a war they couldn't quite explain. "Guys," Bottom called, still carrying his animal head. "There you are. Where did you go?" They stared at him, at the mask, at his disheveled appearance. "You turned into a monster," Flute said flatly. "We thought we were going to die." "It was just a mask," Bottom said, laughing. "Some guy gave it to me, said there were cops. I was trying to help." "There were no cops," Quint said. "There was just you, transformed into something terrifying, and we ran. We've been sitting here for hours, trying to decide if we should call the police or a priest." "It was just a misunderstanding," Bottom insisted. But even as he said it, he felt the memories of the night slipping away like water through his fingers. There had been something else, hadn't there? A woman? A queen? Or had he dreamed that part? "I think we should abandon the guerrilla theater concept," Quint said. "Maybe just submit to some legitimate festivals. Get permits. Do things legally." The others murmured agreement. The night had killed their appetite for chaos, for risk, for art that challenged and provoked. They wanted safety, normalcy, W-2 forms, and health insurance. Bottom felt something deflate in his chest, but he was too tired to argue. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, okay, let's go get breakfast. I'm buying." They trudged toward a diner on Amsterdam Avenue, 6 artists who'd glimpsed something strange and beautiful and terrifying, and had collectively decided to forget it as quickly as possible. By 8 a.m., Theodore Aegeus was pacing his office like a caged animal. He'd been awake all night after discovering Hermia's empty room, her closet partially cleaned out, a note on her desk that said simply, "I'm sorry, I have to live my own life." He'd called the police, who'd been supremely unhelpful. 22-year-old woman leaves home voluntarily, not a crime, sir. Call us if she's actually missing for 48 hours. He'd called Demetrius, who hadn't answered. He'd called Hermia's friends, got nothing but answering machines and groggy roommates who knew nothing. And so he'd paced, imagining the worst. His daughter dead in a gutter somewhere, or worse, married to that club promoter in some awful city hall ceremony. When his office phone rang at 8:15, he grabbed it before the first ring finished. "Yes, Mr. Aegeus?" The doorman from his building. "Your daughter is here, in the lobby, with several other people." Theodore was in the elevator before the man finished speaking. He burst into the lobby to find a scene that looked like the aftermath of a music festival. Hermia and Lysander, dirty and disheveled, holding hands like prisoners facing execution together. Demetrius in his ruined suit looking like a banker who'd been mugged, and Helena tear-streaked and exhausted, her designer dress torn beyond repair. "Hermia," Theodore said, relief and anger warring in his voice. "What the hell happened?" "I tried to run away," Hermia said simply. "It didn't work. The universe or fate or Central Park stopped us." "Central Park? You were in Central Park? All night?" Theodore looked like he might have a heart attack. "Do you have any idea how dangerous—" "I know," Hermia interrupted. "I know it was stupid, but I had to do something, Dad. You were going to force me to marry Demetrius or lock me away. What choice did I have?" Theodore looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Saw not the little girl he remembered, but a woman, terrified and defiant and absolutely serious. He turned to Demetrius. "And you? You were supposed to bring her back." "I tried," Demetrius said. "But," he glanced at Helena, "but I realized some things last night. About what I actually want versus what I thought I should want." "Meaning?" "Meaning I don't want to marry Hermia," Demetrius said clearly. "She doesn't love me. She never will. And he took a breath. "I think I've been chasing the wrong person all along." Theodore's face went through several expressions: confusion, anger, relief, more confusion. "You don't want to marry her?" "No, sir, I'm sorry. I know we had an arrangement, but—" "You don't want to marry my daughter." Theodore started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. "The one man who wants her doesn't have my approval, and the one man with my approval doesn't want her. This is a farce. Dad, Hermia started. No, let me finish. Theodore held up his hand. He looked at Lysander, really looked at him for the first time. Saw not a club promoter, not a dropout, but a young man who'd spent all night in Central Park protecting his daughter, who stood here now knowing he'd face Theodore's wrath. What do you do for a living? I promote club nights, Lysander said honestly. I make about $30,000 a year. I live in a studio apartment in Alphabet City. I don't have health insurance. But I love your daughter. That's not going to change whether you approve or not. Theodore was quiet for a long moment. The lobby was silent except for the morning doorman pretending not to eavesdrop. Finally, Theodore sighed, the sound of a man who'd been holding on too tight for too long. My father chose my wife for me, he said quietly. Hermia's mother. It was a good match on paper. Right family, right connections, right everything. We were miserable. She died when Hermia was 10, and I think part of her was relieved to go. He looked at his daughter. I didn't want that for you. I thought I was protecting you, giving you stability. You were giving me a prison, Hermia said softly. I know. Theodore rubbed his face. Go home, both of you. Get cleaned up. We'll talk later when everyone's slept and showered and can think clearly. You're not going to force me. I'm not forcing you to do anything, Theodore said. Except maybe take a bath. You smell like Central Park. Hermia burst into tears, relief this time, and hugged her father. Lysander stood awkwardly to the side until Theodore extended his hand. $30,000 a year? Theodore said. Yes, sir. We'll work on that. They shook hands, and something shifted. Some ancient battle ending in unexpected peace. Demetrius and Helena stood together watching this reunion with their own complex emotions. Helena had spent so long wanting Demetrius that she didn't know what to do now that the chase was over. Want to get breakfast? Demetrius asked her. Somewhere that serves mimosas. I think we've earned alcohol at 8 in the morning. I look terrible, Helena protested weakly. We all look terrible. Come on. There's a place on Madison that doesn't care what you look like as long as your credit card works. They walked out together into the morning sunshine, and for the first time in months, Helena felt something other than longing, maybe just hunger, maybe possibility. It was not love, not yet, but it was real in a way nothing had been for a long time. At the Port Authority bus terminal, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. The early morning crowd shuffled through, commuters from Jersey, travelers heading to Philadelphia and Boston, people who'd spent the night in the terminal because they had nowhere else to go. The smell was Universal Transit Station, coffee, cleaning fluid, exhaust fumes, and human desperation. Titania stood with Mercury near the ticket counter, buying him a one-way ticket to Indianapolis. The boy had changed from his white clothes into jeans and a t-shirt she'd bought him at a 24-hour Duane Reade. He looked younger now, more like what he was, a 19-year-old kid who'd run away from home and was finally going back. You don't have to do this, Mercury said, but his voice held relief more than protest. I do, Titania said firmly. I should have done it weeks ago. Before She stopped, the memory of Bottom too fresh, too humiliating. Before things got complicated. I could stay. I could get a real job, not just... You could, she interrupted. And in 5 years you'd be exhausted and jaded and wondering where your youth went. This city takes everything, Mercury. You give it your 20s, your idealism, your health, and it gives you back stories you can't quite remember, and a rent-controlled apartment if you're lucky. You love it, though. I do. But I'm built for it. You're built for something gentler. She handed him the ticket and an envelope. There's $500 in there. Call your parents from the bus. They're probably losing their minds. Mercury took the envelope, his eyes filling with tears. Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I got off that bus. For the adventure. It was an adventure, Titania agreed, smiling sadly. Now go have a different one. One that doesn't involve after-hours clubs and questionable substances. She hugged him, and then he was walking toward his gate, his small backpack over his shoulder, glancing back once before disappearing into the crowd. Titania stood there for a moment, feeling the loss, but also something lighter. Relief, maybe. or just the absence of responsibility. Oberon was waiting outside the terminal, leaning against a parking meter, smoking a cigarette that he'd bummed off someone. He looked different in the daylight, older, more human, less like the king of anything. "He's gone?" Oberon asked. On his way home, Titania lit her own cigarette, her hands shaking slightly. "I'm a terrible person. You're a complicated person. There's a difference. I almost ruined that kid's life. And for what? To prove I could still nurture something. To fill some void. To remind me that you don't belong to me." Oberon said quietly, "that you get to make your own choices, even terrible ones." Titania laughed, sharp and bitter. "Well, mission accomplished. I made a spectacular, terrible choice. That performance artist, God, what was his name?" Bottom. Of course it was." She covered her face with her hands. "I told him he was a visionary. I had my crew wait on him hand and foot. Oh God, I probably said worse things I don't remember." "You were under the influence," Oberon said. "We both were. I was under the influence of jealousy and pride. You were under the influence of something chemical. Neither of us were ourselves." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city wake up around them. Cabs honked, vendors set up fruit stands. A man in a suit rushed past, already on his cell phone, already stressed at 8:30 in the morning. "We can't keep doing this," Titania said finally. "The wars, the territories, the petty revenge, it's exhausting. We're too old for this shit." "We're not old. Oberon, we've been doing this for almost 10 years. The club scene is changing. Everything's going corporate. The tunnel's owned by a corporation now. Even the underground is becoming branded. Our kind of nightlife, it's dying." He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. The scrappy warehouse parties of the early 90s were giving way to velvet rope commercialism. The Giuliani administration was already making noise about cleaning up the city, about shutting down after-hours spots and enforcing cabaret laws. The wild New York they'd known was becoming something safer, duller, more expensive. "So what do we do?" he asked. "We adapt, or we don't, but we stop fighting each other." She looked at him directly. "I miss you. I miss us. Not the drama, not the power plays, but the actual us." "Do you ever miss that?" "Every day," Oberon admitted. "Then let's try again, smarter this time. No more using people as chess pieces. No more potions and revenge schemes. No more collecting strays and making me jealous," Oberon countered. "Deal." Titania extended her hand, formal and playful at once. Oberon took it, pulled her close, and kissed her there on the grimy sidewalk outside Port Authority, while buses hissed and tourists took wrong turns, and the city continued its endless forward motion. Across town, in a diner on Amsterdam Avenue, Bottom sat with his crew and ate eggs that tasted like rubber, and drank coffee that tasted like burnt tires. The fluorescent lights made everyone look sick. A TV in the corner played the morning news with the sound off. Stock reports, weather, images of the president shaking hands with someone. "I had the weirdest dream," Bottom said, pushing his eggs around his plate. "There was a woman like a queen or something, and she was in love with me. Said I was a genius." The others exchanged glances. "That wasn't a dream," Flute said quietly. "That happened. We saw it. No, it had to be a dream. Dreams feel more real sometimes when you're overtired. I probably fell asleep in the park and dreamed the whole thing." "Bottom," Quince said carefully. "You turned into a monster. We all ran away. Then when we came back to look for you, you were with this woman and her entourage. She was treating you like royalty." Bottom stared at him. "That's insane." "Yeah," Snout agreed. "It was." Bottom tried to remember, but it was like trying to hold water. The harder he grasped, the more slipped away. There were fragments, candlelight, soft hands, someone calling him brilliant. But it couldn't be real. Things like that didn't happen to guys from Queens. "I'm losing my mind," Bottom said finally. "We all are. We need to get real jobs. I need to get real jobs." 3 months later, on a cold January evening, Hermia stood in a Soho gallery surrounded by her photographs. The opening was small, modest, a group show featuring emerging artists, the kind of thing that would get a paragraph in Time Out New York if they were lucky, but it was hers, her work, her vision, her name on the wall. Lysander stood beside her, playing the role of supportive boyfriend, but also genuinely proud. He'd helped her mat and frame everything, had called in favors to get critics to show up. Theodore Egius stood on the other side of the room, looking uncomfortable in a gallery full of downtown artists, but staying anyway, trying. "This one," Theodore said, stopping in front of a black and white image of Central Park at dawn, trees silhouetted against a lightning sky. "This is exceptional." "Thanks, Dad," Hermia said, and meant it. Across the gallery, Demetrius arrived with Helena. They weren't officially dating. Both of them were being careful, taking it slow after the intensity of that night. But they were something. Friends, maybe, with the possibility of more. Helena had cut her hair short, was eating regularly again, had stopped following anyone. Demetrius had quit his job at Calvin Klein to start his own small consulting firm. Both were works in progress. "She's really talented," Helena said, studying the photographs. "I always knew she was, but seeing it like this..." "Yeah," Demetrius agreed. "We almost ruined her that night, chasing her through the park like she was property to be won. We were all a little insane that night. We were a lot insane." He turned to her. "Do you ever think about it? What happened?" "Sometimes. It's like a fever dream. I can't quite trust my memories of it." Helena looked at him. "Do you remember what you said to me? On the bench?" "I apologized, said I'd been an asshole. Before that, in the woods, you said you loved me." Demetrius was quiet for a moment. "I don't remember saying it, but I remember the feeling. Like someone had rewired my brain. It was chemical, not real." "Right, not real." Helena tried to keep the disappointment out of her voice. "But this," Demetrius gestured between them, "whatever this is now, this is real. It's messy and slow, and we're both damaged goods, but it's real. That counts for something." Helena smiled, genuine and warm. "Yeah, it does." At Elysium that same night, the club was packed for a special reunion party. Oberon and Titania stood together behind the DJ booth, watching their combined crews dance and mix, and remember why they loved this life. The venue had been served papers the week before. The building's owner was selling, developers were moving in. By spring, Elysium would be luxury condos. But tonight, it was still theirs. "End of an era," Titania said, leaning against Oberon. "Beginning of a new one," he corrected. "We'll find another space. We always do." "Will we, though? The city's changing. Giuliani wants to Disney-fy Times Square. They're closing CBGBs. The rent on this block has tripled. So we adapt. We've survived worse than gentrification." Puck rolled up on his bike, somehow having ridden it through the crowded club. Bosses, I've got news. That Mercury kid, he's back in Indiana, enrolled in college, studying education. Sent me an email, sent it to Titania, but she let me read it. He says thank you for the adventure, but he's good with cornfields now." Titania smiled. "Good. That's good." Also, Puck continued, "Remember those performance artists? The ones from Central Park?" "Vaguely," Oberon said. "They're doing their show tonight at PS 122. Apparently one of them couldn't let go of the dream. Bottom, the guy with the head. He convinced them to do it legit, got a time slot at a real venue. I'm thinking we should go 'cause some chaos, make it interesting." "Absolutely not," Titania said firmly. "We've caused enough chaos in people's lives. But it would be funny." "No." Puck shrugged, grinned, pedaled away into the crowd. Some things never changed. At PS 122 on First Avenue, in a black box theater that smelled like fresh paint and old dreams, Bottom stood backstage in his purple velvet blazer. The house was maybe half full. Friends, family, critics from small publications, the usual crowd for experimental downtown theater. Quince was doing last-minute tech checks. Flute was having a panic attack in the bathroom. Snout's wall looked even more ridiculous under stage lights, but also somehow transcendent. 5 minutes, the stage manager called. Bottom looked at his reflection in a dirty mirror. He was 30 years old, working 3 jobs, living in Queens, performing for an audience of 50 people who'd paid $12 each. This wasn't success by any conventional measure, but it was real. He'd had a dream, literally a fever dream in Central Park about being recognized as a genius, and he'd woken up and made something real instead. Places, the stage manager called. Bottom joined his crew on stage. The lights went down. The audience quieted, and they performed their ridiculous, beautiful, heartfelt play about love and walls and death and longing. It wasn't perfect. Flute forgot his lines. Snout's wall collapsed halfway through. But it was honest, and that counted for something. Later, after the show, after the modest applause and the free wine in plastic cups, Bottom walked through the East Village toward the subway. The night was cold and clear, the kind of winter night when the city felt sharp and alive. He passed clubs and bars, restaurants and bodegas, glimpsed 1,000 stories happening simultaneously in lit windows. He thought about that night in Central Park, the parts he remembered and the parts that felt like dreams. A woman calling him brilliant, a sense of being transformed, the feeling that anything was possible. Maybe it had happened, maybe it hadn't, but it had changed him either way, had given him the courage to try. Manhattan hummed around him, indifferent and infinite, the city of dreams and disasters, of fortunes made and lost, of people becoming who they needed to be. It was 1995, and everything was about to change. The internet was coming, the economy was booming, the gritty New York of the 70s and 80s was dying. But right now, in this moment, the city was still wild and possible. Still a place where magic could happen if you were brave enough or foolish enough to look for it. Bottom descended into the subway, heading home, already thinking about the next show, the next dream, the next transformation. Above ground, the city kept moving. It always did. The end.